Come out, wherever you are. I know where you're hiding, I know who you are. No need to run or go too far. Come out, wherever you are. Come out, wherever you are.
Welcome to the Daily Allegory through Astrological Divination. The magic motto of the day is Encryption isn't invisibility. Patterns are prophecy. Today's story is about a tight-knit crew of predators who spiral into total paranoia when their untouchable WhatsApp group begins to glitch. Messages misfire, attachments failing, odd red receipts appearing, turning their private sanctuary into a haunted room. Because inside the chat they plan cons, fraud schemes, and even murder plots, traded doctored proofs, circulated fake videos, and mocked their targets with stolen photos like trophies, all while believing encryption mode made them invisible. The panic becomes suffocating after one of their hackers scores a highly protected individual's exported folder, only it wasn't a prize. It was a ghost trace, a silent pipeline, if you will, a shortcut that routes straight back into their supposedly secure channel, and suddenly to people who only call you in once they already know all the answers, leave one of them breathless on the phone, asking them to come in for a quick talk. Then the circle starts shrinking, one member at a time, quietly plucked, detained, and locked up, until the remaining bigger fish feels the net tightening without ever even seeing it. Trapped between dread and certainty, realizing the following was real. The watchers were patient, and it's only a matter of time before the last message is read. Today's story is called The 11th House Ghost. They called it the Vault, and they treated it like a church. Thumbprints instead of incense, emojis instead of hymns. In the beginning, the green check marks felt like immunity, a clean myth, a promise that the dark could be spoken safely, that their conspiracies could live inside a bright little chat bubble and never leak into the daylight. They believed in encryption the way desperate people believe in miracles, not because they understood it, but because they needed it to be true. The chat was where they became a we, a network, a pack, an 11th house machine, friends, allies, recruits, audience. Every plan, every joke, every knife, sharp laugh at someone else's ruin. They shared photos of victims like souvenirs. They traded doctored proof and stitched together videos designed to spread even faster than proof itself. They rehearsed cruelty until it sounded like humor. They wrote the outlines of cons and frauds, and when their fantasies grew bored with money, they started flirting with blood, speaking of murder the way bored people almost speak of the weather. One of them kept an astrology app open like a dashboard. It was a joke at first, then it became a ritual. Mars conjunct North Node in the 11th. It read that week, fate fused to aggression through networks, through groups, through the hive. They laughed at it though. Destiny, somebody laughed, followed by a string of skulls. But the sky wasn't asking to be believed. It was simply reflecting what they had built. The first sign wasn't police or sirens or a raid. It was smaller. It was worse. It was a glitch. A message appeared twice. Same words, same timestamp, almost like reality stuttered, if you will. A voice note went in play, then played backwards for a second before correcting itself. A photo sent cleanly, then reloaded as a black square. Someone posted a joke and watched it hang there, unread, until a gray scene flickered and vanished again. Server hiccup, somebody typed. It was an update bug. Shadow ban? Somebody questioned. They threw explanations at the screen the way you throw salt at a bad omen. Then the red receipts started lying. A message went seen by a member who swore that they were asleep. A file looked downloaded by somebody who hadn't even opened the app in days. In a list of participants, a name appeared that shouldn't have even been there. Just for a breath, then gone. No profile picture, no status, only a blank, silent shape where a person should have been. The hacker insisted that it was nothing. He always insisted, though. But he began sleeping with his phone under his pillow. Then he stopped sleeping altogether. At night, the group chat became a tide pool of panic dressed as banter. The cruelty evaporated at first. What was left was fear. wearing a mask. They started seeing patterns where there were no patterns at all. The same car twice on the commute, a stranger pausing too long outside a window, a neighbor who nodded without smiling, the click of a distant camera that might have been a bird, a branch, coincidence perhaps, until coincidence became unbearable. Their leader, the one who never used a real name, the one who ran them like a business, began sending late-night voice notes that sounded like prayers, not to God, to control. Delete everything, he said. Clean your devices. Clean your circles. No loose mouths. But the problem wasn't the mouths. It was the mirror. Because a week earlier, the hacker had bragged about a score, a folder pulled from a highly protected individual, the kind of person you weren't really supposed to touch if you enjoyed breathing freely. The hacker had waved it like a trophy, convinced it was leverage, convinced it was sensitive. And it was sensitive, all right. Just not in the way you thought. The folder was a ghost trace, a silent back channel disguised as a prize, a shortcut with teeth. A pipeline that didn't steal from the protected individual, it pointed back at the thieves like a flare. And once it was opened, once it was moved, once it was shared with the wrong pride, the vault was no longer a vault. It was a room with a one-way glass, kind of like an interrogation room. Someone was in there with them, watching them type, watching them laugh, watching them plan. And now the air in the chat felt haunted almost. The astrology app updated like a heartbeat. Mars and Pisces, it said. Action drowned in fog. Violence dressed as innocence. Predators moving through soft water. The leader took screenshots and set them to the group like warnings. Look, he typed. This is a cycle. We ride this out. Freaking out almost. As if fate could be negotiated with by pretending that it was weather. It's not a snowstorm. But the chart kept sharpening. A Pisces stellium glowed like a bruise. Mars, North Node, Mercury, Sun and Pisces, drive, destiny, communication, identity, all submerged. Their whole world had been built on distortion and drift and plausible deniability. Their entire mythology was, we're not really doing it, we're just talking. And then like a match struck in a dry room, another cluster burned red in the background. Neptune, Saturn, Venus, and Chiron in Aries. Illusion and discipline, charm and pain, all ignited. A force that could no longer be soothed. A reckoning that would not be talked down. They began turning on each other. We had the charmer, the one who always knew how to sound harmless, starting accusing the hacker of planting the breach on purpose. You got greedy, she said in the chat. You brought this curse into the room. The hacker answered with rage, so manic it looked like humor until you heard the tremor underneath it. I brought you results. The fixer, who handled their fake proofs, posted a long paragraph about loyalty and snitches and how fear made weak people confess to imaginary crimes. I read like reassurances until the last line. If one of you breaks, I'll know. Then someone vanished from the chat group. No goodbye. No, I'm deleting the app. No flourish. Just gone. Profile erased like they never actually existed. The leader tried to laugh it off. Probably got spooked, he said. But within 48 hours, another one went silence. And then another, and then another. Their phones started ringing from numbers that they didn't even recognize. No one answered at first. Then the calls came more often, always at the worst times. During meetings, during dinner, at 3:07 in the morning. When you're most human and least armored. Finally, one of them answered. The voice on the other end was calm. Not threatening, not pleading, certain. It asked them to come in for questions. It didn't say, if you have time. It didn't say, we'd like to hear your side. It said, we need you to come in. And the person on the line who had built their identity on power went absolutely breathless like a child caught stealing. Because everybody knows that tone. The tone of people who only call you in once they already know all the answers. And then after that, the paranoia was no longer paranoia. It was validated fear. The most poisonous kind. Fear with proof. The leader started seeing watchers everywhere. His reflection in the elevator mirror looked like somebody else. A man in a suit in a cafe looked up at exactly the wrong moment. A drone-shaped silhouette crossed the moon. He stopped leaving his house. Then he stopped turning on lights. Then he stopped trusting his own thoughts. This was Mars Square Lilith in the 12th. The app read one night, a war with the hidden. Aggression colliding with the shadow. The taboo coming to finally collect its prize. Like the saying goes, chickens coming home to roost. And in the 12th house, the enemy doesn't always kick in the door. Sometimes it just removes your ability to sleep. He began to hear the chat even when the phone was off. Phantom vibrations, imagined typing, a course of their own cruelty returning like a haunting. The worse he felt, the more he scrolled, like staring into a wound to prove that it existed. The group's jokes curled into prayers. Delete it all, burn your devices, move. Don't drive the same route. Don't trust anyone. The cruel irony, they were experiencing what they had done to other people. The slow erosion of reality, the constant question, is it me? Am I losing it? Only their versions came with handcuffs waiting patiently in the wings. And still, the leader couldn't accept the simplest truth. They had never been invisible. They had been allowed. Allowed to get comfortable. Allowed to repeat themselves. Allowed to build a pattern. Allowed to recruit. Allowed to create a network large enough to map. Allowed to believe that their vault was sacred. Their whole world was in the 11th house. The group, the web, the crowd. And now the crowd had teeth. The call came from on a Tuesday. No dramatic soundtrack, no storm. Just a number on a screen in a quiet room that suddenly felt too small to contain his heartbeat. He watched it ring until it stopped. Then it rang again. He answered on the third ring as if bravery could be summoned by delay. Hello? He paused, took a breath. And then they said, "We need you to come in." His mouth went dry, his lungs forgot their rhythm. He tried to speak and heard nothing but the air scrape. The voice didn't threaten, it didn't bargain, it didn't even explain. It waited, because it could. Behind the voice, faintly, he heard the sound of papers moving, chairs shifting, a pen click, a soundtrack of absolute certainty. In his mind, the astrology app glowed like a warning label that he could no longer laugh at. Pisces, where everything dissolves. Alibis, denials, the dream of secrecy. Aries, where the blade finally leaves the sheath and gets drawn. He managed finally, on what grounds? The answer is almost gentle. On the grounds that we've been listening for a long time. Something inside of him collapsed at that moment. Not the ego, not the bravado, but the last fragile belief that he could outsmart consequence. He ended a call and stared at his phone as if it were an animal that had bitten him. Then the group chat pinged. It was a new message this time, from a name that didn't belong to anyone he knew. No profile picture, no status, just a blank icon like a closed eye. The message contained only 3 words. We see you. In that moment, he understood the true horror. The Watchers hadn't just entered the vault. They had owned it for a while. They had watched the cruelty, archived the laughter, collected the plans. They had waited until the net was wide enough to pull cleanly, one by one. The inner circle had been plucked, not randomly, not chaotically, but in a slow, surgical sequence designed to make the remaining ones rot from the inside out. To create the feeling of doom that no amount of running could outrun. The bigger fish had always feared being followed. Now he knew he had been followed for quite some time. And the worst part wasn't the arrest he could feel approaching. Arrest he was feeling approaching. It was the headline. It wasn't the headlines. It wasn't even the courtroom. It was the realization that the vault, the place that he had been most honest, was where he had been most exposed. He looked around in his dark room and felt for the first time what his victims must have felt. The sudden certainty that privacy was a myth, and that the world had been watching quietly, that the trap had been set long before you noticed the door had closed. He opened the astrology app with trembling fingers like a man reading a verdict in the stars. Mars conjunct North Node in the 11th. It repeated. Destiny through the group. Fate through the network. He whispered the only prayer left to a predator who had become prey. Please let it be a glitch. But the phone did not glitch again. It was finished with games, and somewhere, In a room he could not see, someone who already knew all the answers prepared to questions anyways, just to watch him try to lie. We're going to end this with the invocation of the 11th house ghost for truth, exposure, and the undoing of hidden networks. By the green glow of the secure screen, by the double check that lies, by the message that arrives twice, I call the ghost that lives between the lines. Mars conjunct North Node in the 11th, let the network meet its fate. Let the hive hear its own heartbeat. Let the web remember every strand it spun. Mars and Pisces, where crimes float like prayers, where denial swims like a fish, where the blade hides in water. Stir the depths until what is buried rises. Mars square Lilith in the 12th. Wake the shadow that stalks the stalkers. The exile that knows every secret door. The hunger that cannot be bribed. By the Pisces stellium, Mars, North Node, Mercury, Sun, let fog become a mirror. Let words become evidence. Let identity be stripped of costume. By the Aries stellium, Neptune, Saturn, Venus, Chiron, ignite the illusion, harden the consequence, cut through the charm, and cauterize the wound with truth. I invoke the glitch that is not a glitch, the red receipt that is not a receipt, the name that appears with no face, the silent pipeline with teeth. Let every boast become a breadcrumb. Let every laugh become a locator. Let every plan become a map in the hands of the righteous. Let their vault become a room of a one-way glass. Now to the watchers who have waited, watch. To the hunters who have hidden, surface. To the ones who believe they were unseen, be seen. And when the phone rings, let breath catch. Let certainty speak. Let the question arrive as verdict. Come in. So the ghost moves to the group. So the net tightens. So the final message is delivered. Not in threat, but in fact. We see you. By the divine authority I contain, we whisper this decreance in the law that underlies physical law. And so it is. Hopefully you found it entertaining. Make good choices out there, people.